Never marry a woman with kids in tow. Let me tell you why. I never thought I'd be the kind of man to raise another man's child. But when I met Rachel, it didn't matter. She was everything I thought I wanted, warm, funny, with a smile that made my chest feel light. Her little boy, Liam, was only 3 then. The first time I saw him run into her arms, I remember thinking, that's what love looks like. We met at a friend's barbecue. She told me she was divorced, that her ex-husband lived out of state, and wasn't really involved. She said it casually, like it was just another fact about her life, but I saw the way her eyes clouded over when she mentioned him. I figured she'd been hurt, and I wanted to be the man who never made her feel that way again. For the next 2 years, we built something, or at least I thought we did. I was there for every scraped knee, every preschool graduation, every bad dream. Liam started calling me Dad on his own. The first time he did, Rachel had tears in her eyes. She told me she'd never loved anyone the way she loved me. When I proposed, it wasn't just to her, it was to Liam too. I was choosing both of them. And I meant it. The first year of marriage felt like a dream. We bought a small house on the edge of town. I took extra shifts at work so Rachel could cut back her hours and spend more time at home. I didn't mind, it felt like providing for my family. We talked about maybe having another child, but for me, it didn't matter. Liam was already my son in every way that counted. I thought we were solid. Unshakable. But looking back now, there were cracks. Little things I brushed aside because I trusted her. Cracks that would split wide open the day I found out the truth. It started small. Rachel began taking me days, more often, Saturdays where she'd say she needed to clear her head or go shopping alone. At first, I encouraged it. I figured every parent needed a break. But they became more frequent. Longer. She'd leave in the late morning and sometimes wouldn't get back until almost midnight. When I asked, she'd smile and say, "Don't be such a worrier. I just lost track of time." I told myself she deserved her freedom. After all, she'd been through a bad marriage before. I didn't want to be the controlling husband. But then there were the phone calls. Late at night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her voice in the living room, soft and low, almost nervous. Whenever I asked who it was, she'd say it was her sister or a friend from work. And I believed her, because believing her was easier than doubting her. The first real red flag came one Sunday morning. She was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The name on the screen stopped me cold, Evan. I knew the name. Evan was her ex-husband. I told myself it was probably about Liam, maybe something important. But the message preview didn't look like a parenting discussion. It said, "Last night was, wow. I can't stop thinking about it." My stomach twisted. When she came out of the shower, towel wrapped around her, I asked casually, "Has Evan been in touch much lately?" She froze for just a second, just long enough for me to notice. Then she smiled like nothing was wrong and said, "Just about Liam." "Why?" I wanted to believe her so badly that I nodded and let it go. But that was the first moment a voice in the back of my head whispered, "Something's wrong." I ignored it. I wish I hadn't. A few weeks later, Rachel told me she'd be taking Liam to her mom's for the weekend. Her mom lived 2 hours away, so it made sense they'd stay overnight. Friday afternoon, I kissed her goodbye at the door. Liam was buckled into the back seat, chattering about Grandma's cookies. I waved until they turned the corner, and for a moment I felt good, happy they'd get some family time. That evening, I called to say goodnight to Liam. She didn't answer. I figured they were busy, maybe he'd already gone to bed. But when she finally called back an hour later, her voice sounded distant. The kind of voice you use when you're hiding where you are. Something inside me shifted. The next day, I got a text from my buddy Mark. "Hey man, I swear I just saw Rachel at the Lakeshore Inn, with some guy." My hands went cold. "You sure it was her?" I typed back. He sent a picture. It wasn't perfect, taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking the way she tilted her head when she laughed. And sitting across from her was a man I'd never seen before. Except I had. It was Evan. They were leaning across the table, heads close together, like no one else in the world existed. I sat there staring at my phone for what felt like hours. My wife was supposed to be 2 hours away at her mother's house. Instead, she was at a lakeside restaurant with the man she swore was just her past. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I just sat in the dark that night, the sound of the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, my mind replaying every moment of our marriage like film strips in reverse. And in every reel, I started to see the cracks for what they really were, signs I'd missed, or worse, ignored. Sunday evening, I heard her car in the driveway. I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to read. Liam burst through the door first, holding a paper bag of cookies from Grandma. Rachel followed, smiling too brightly. "Trip was good?" I asked, keeping my tone even. She nodded, setting her purse down. "Yeah, Mom says hi. Sorry I didn't answer much, service was spotty." Spotty service. At a lakeside restaurant. I let it slide. For the moment. Later that night, when Liam was asleep, I told her I needed to run to the store. Instead, I drove to the Lakeshore Inn. I didn't know what I was looking for, maybe proof I could no longer talk myself out of. The bartender recognized her right away. Oh yeah, she was here Friday night. Came in with a guy. They stayed for hours. My stomach tightened. What did he look like? He described Evan perfectly. That was all I needed. I drove home, heart pounding but strangely calm. She was on the couch scrolling her phone when I walked in. "Rachel," I said, "how's your mom?" She glanced up. "Good. Why?" I pulled out my phone and set Mark's photo on the coffee table. She stared at it. The color drained from her face. She started. "Don't," I cut in. "Don't tell me it's old. Don't tell me it's not you. Don't tell me it's about Liam." Her hands trembled. "It just happened once." I laughed bitterly. "Once? So Friday night was the first time you met with your ex-husband in secret?" Silence. "You married me, Rachel. I chose you. I chose Liam. And you went back to him." Tears slid down her cheeks, but I didn't feel sympathy. Not anymore. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I called a lawyer. 2 days after the confrontation with Rachel, I tracked down Evan. I wasn't looking for a fight, I just needed to hear it from his mouth. He agreed to meet at a small coffee shop downtown. When he walked in, he looked nervous, like he half expected me to swing at him. I didn't. I just sat there, staring, until he broke the silence. "I didn't know she was still married," he blurted. "Really?" I asked, my voice low. "Because I'm her husband. And I've been raising your son for the past 5 years. He flinched at that. "She told me you two were separated. That you weren't even living together anymore." I wanted to believe he was lying, but the way his eyes darted and his voice cracked, it felt like he was telling the truth. "How long?" I asked. He hesitated, then sighed. 3 months. We reconnected after she called me about Liam's school stuff. Said she wanted him to have a relationship with his dad again. At first, we just met for coffee, but then he trailed off. I clenched my fists under the table. "And Friday night?" He nodded, shame flickering across his face. "We stayed at the Lakeshore Inn. She said Liam was at her mom's." That part hit harder than I expected. She had used her own son as an alibi. Evan stared at his coffee. "Look, I'm not proud of this. I'll back off. I don't want to ruin your marriage." I almost laughed at that. "You already did." When I stood to leave, I looked him dead in the eye. "If you care about Liam at all, you'll tell him the truth when he's old enough to ask. And you'll remember that I was the one who was there when you weren't." He nodded, but I didn't wait for a reply. Walking out of that cafe, I realized something. Rachel's betrayal wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a choice. And she made it more than once. I put it off for as long as I could. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that the life he knows is about to break apart? The morning I decided to tell him, I found him in the backyard, sitting cross-legged in the grass with his toy dinosaurs lined up in a perfect battle formation. He looked up, smiling. "Daddy, you be the T-Rex," he said, holding it out to me. That word, Daddy, hit like a knife. He didn't know any different. I sat down beside him. "Hey, buddy, we need to talk about something important." He frowned, sensing my tone. "Am I in trouble?" "No. Not at all." I took a breath. "You know how sometimes grown-ups can't live together anymore? Even if they still care about each other?" He nodded slowly. "Like in that movie where the mom and dad live in different houses?" "Exactly," I said, my voice already starting to crack. "Well, your mom and we're going to live in different houses." His little brow furrowed. "But I'll still see you, right?" I pulled him into my arms. "Always. I will always be your dad. That's never going to change." He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, in the smallest voice, "Is it because I was bad?" That nearly broke me. "No, Liam. You didn't do anything wrong. This is between me and your mom. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." He buried his face in my chest, and I held him until his shoulders stopped shaking. When he finally pulled back, he whispered, "Okay, but can we still play dinosaurs sometimes?" I managed a smile. "Every time you want, buddy. Every time." Inside, I was shattered. But in that moment, I knew my job was to make sure his world didn't fall apart the way mine had. 2 weeks before the court date, Rachel texted me. "We need to talk. Just the two of us." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a quiet park near Liam's school. She showed up in jeans and a sweatshirt, hair pulled back, no makeup, the same way she looked when we first met. Maybe it was deliberate, trying to remind me of a different time. She didn't waste any time. "I made a mistake," she said, eyes already wet. "I got caught up in feelings I didn't expect. Evan was a part of my life for so long, and when we started talking again..." I held up a hand. "You don't have to dress it up. You slept with your ex-husband behind my back for months. That's not a slip. That's a pattern." She flinched but pressed on. "I wasn't happy, Mark. You were working all the time, and I felt alone. Evan reminded me of who I used to be before all of this." She gestured vaguely between us. "Before I stepped in and raised your son?" I asked, my voice sharpening. Her jaw tightened. "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple," I said. "I built a life with you. I gave you everything I could, and you went back to the man who left you." Tears streamed down her cheeks now. "I thought maybe we could fix this. For Liam." I shook my head. "The best thing for Liam is parents who don't lie to each other. I'll never badmouth you to him, Rachel. But I won't live in the same house with someone who can look me in the eye and lie like you did." She stared at me for a long time, like she was searching for something, anger, softness, anything she could work with. But I was empty. Finally, she whispered, "So that's it." "That's it," I said. "You made your choice. Now you live with it." I walked away, and for the first time since it all started, I felt lighter. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, just 4 rows of benches, a judge's bench at the front, and that dry, recycled air that smells faintly of paper and anxiety. Rachel sat on the other side of the room with her lawyer. She avoided my eyes, fiddling with the strap of her purse. I focused on the stack of documents in front of me, financial records, text screenshots, the photo from Mark. My lawyer, a calm, sharp-eyed woman named Peterson, leaned over. "Remember, keep it factual. No emotion unless it's about Liam." The judge began with the custody agreement. Rachel's lawyer tried to push for primary custody, arguing that Liam was more used to being with his mother. Peterson countered with my role in raising him from the age of 3, how I'd been his primary provider, and the stability I could offer. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. Your Honor, Liam is my son in every way that matters. I will always encourage his relationship with his mother, but I want him to have a stable, honest home. I can give him that. Rachel finally looked up at me then, eyes red, lips pressed tight. After a tense hour of back and forth, the judge made her ruling, joint legal custody, but a 50-50 physical split. 1 week with me, 1 week with her. A schedule we'd exchange every Sunday evening. It wasn't the full custody I dreamed of, but it was enough to keep me in Liam's daily life. Next came the division of assets. That part was colder, numbers, percentages, valuations. I kept the house, she kept her car and a smaller share of our savings. I didn't fight over the rest. I didn't care about the furniture or the TV. I cared about my son. When the judge adjourned, Rachel lingered by the door like she wanted to say something. But I walked past without slowing down. It wasn't anger anymore, it was finality. The day I moved into my new place, it smelled faintly of fresh paint and cardboard. It was smaller than the house, but it was mine, and I'd made sure Liam's room was set up first. His bed, his dinosaur posters, the same night light he'd had since he was 3. When Rachel dropped him off that Sunday, he clutched his backpack and scanned the place like he wasn't sure what to think. Where's the backyard? He asked. I smiled. No backyard here, buddy. But we've got a park down the street, and I already checked. There's a dinosaur-shaped slide. That earned me a grin. The first few nights were strange. He'd wake up at odd hours, wander into my room, and just stand there until I lifted the blanket and let him climb in. I didn't mind. I think we both needed the closeness. By midweek, we'd fallen into a rhythm. Mornings were cereal and cartoons before school. Evenings were homework at the kitchen table, followed by park trips or board games. He asked about his mom sometimes, and I always answered calmly, never with bitterness. One night, while we were building the Lego set, he said, I like it here, it's quiet. I didn't know if he meant that as a compliment, or just an observation, but it hit me hard. Maybe he'd felt the tension in our old home more than I realized. By Sunday, when it was time to take him back to Rachel's, my chest felt heavy. But as I knelt to hug him goodbye, he whispered, Can't wait for next week, Dad. It was the first time since everything fell apart that I felt something close to hope. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. The wounds are still there, but they've scarred over enough that I can go through a day without reopening them. Rachel and I speak only about Liam now, drop-off times, school events, doctor's appointments. It's civil, sometimes even polite. But it's transactional. Whatever love or trust there was between us is gone, replaced by a quiet understanding. We share a child, nothing more. I've stopped replaying the what ifs. What if I'd worked less? What if I'd noticed the signs sooner? What if I'd forgiven her for Liam's sake? The truth is, none of that would have changed who she chose to be. She didn't trip and fall into Evan's arms, she walked there, step by step, and she kept walking back. What I do think about is Liam. How strong he's been. How he still runs to me when I pick him up, how he still slips his hand into mine when we cross the street. How, when we're sitting on the couch watching a movie, he'll lean his head on my shoulder like nothing's changed. I know one day he'll understand more about what happened. And when that time comes, I'll tell him the truth, not to turn him against his mother, but so he knows I never walked away from him. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: love isn't just about choosing someone once. It's about choosing them every day, especially when it's hard. Rachel stopped choosing me. But I will never stop choosing him. And that's enough.